So I'm hoping that my story as a child, having a distorted view of what a father is, and not having that example, just the down spiral that leads into, the confusion, and God getting into my heart and showing me what a true man is, to becoming a father of 6 children. This next month, I'm going to be celebrating 23 years of marriage. I think that when God got a hold of my life, it became an incredible story. But before God got a hold of my life, it was sad. And so I just think that there's probably other men there that are struggling on if they can be a good father or husband. I just want to encourage men that you have no clue what you're missing out on when you don't surrender it all to Christ. Yeah, so obviously I did have a dad that produced me. But my mom, when I was born, my mom wasn't, I think maybe she had a boyfriend. And she had told me that he was my dad. And so my last name actually used to be Kilpatrick. And, but he obviously wasn't around. My mom wasn't with him. He didn't necessarily want anything to do with me. I would try to find him, talk to him, and but I didn't know that he wasn't my father. He knew it, but I thought he was my dad. And my mom, one day I remember going to getting blood work done, and it was just kind of a random thing. I was 10 years old, and come to find out, my mom was having blood work done so she could find out who my true father was. She wanted child support. And so when I was 11, she dropped a bombshell on me that this guy that I had carried his last name wasn't truly my dad, and this other guy was my dad and lived in California, and he wanted to meet me, and I was so excited, thought, man, this is awesome. I'm going to have a dad finally, and we're going to, you got all these ideas of what that looks like, and, and to come to find out, he didn't really have much to do with me either. I would see him once or twice a year. At first, I seen him, a handful of times. He came down and see me, and then I ended up flying out to California and spending, I don't know, a week or so out there with him. But then it would be 2 or 3 years before I even heard from him or seen him. And just the hopes of, man, I finally got a dad, quickly diminished to it's just another person in my life that really doesn't want to be around. When you don't have a father, you got to figure out what is a man. What does that even look like? And I thought it was, you don't let anybody disrespect you. You've got to be tough. You don't show emotion. When disappointment or feeling like you're a failure or unwanted, you develop bitterness and rage, anger, and then you apply that to trying to become what you think is a man. It very quickly puts you in a self-destructive path, or it did for me anyway. There was moments in my life, even as a child, that I knew. I remember finding, my mom's, she used to carry this little, Avon sold these little lipstick containers, and they'd have a little mirror in it, and that's where she would put her straw and a razor blade, to cut up her cocaine, meth, whatever she was snorting. And I'd find those, throw them away, I'd pour alcohol out, crunch up her cigarettes. And I remember thinking, I'll never do this. And when too, we just, our home was always nasty. We had one wall on one of our homes is just covered with mold. And I remember as a kid, cleaning it and thinking, I'm never going to live in this type of filth. So those were just changes, not necessarily godly changes, but just things I thought, I'm going to change course of drugs and alcohol. I became everything that I hated and worse. But I did remember as a child having that thought, I don't want this. This is not good. I don't enjoy this. My mom would drag me around to clubs and to parties every weekend, where they just out getting high and drunk, and, just kind of left to fend myself, but probably as far as like when I knew I'm going to end up like a lot of my friends or the people around me in either dead or in prison or just without hope my whole life. I had been on meth for about a year, and I just looked in the mirror one day. I've always been, even in high school, worked out, and I always wanted to be. I mean, I was a scrawny kid growing up, real skinny, and I always wanted to be, have muscles and be bigger. And so I was always into working out. And of course, when I got on meth, you don't lost my appetite and wasn't working out and wasn't working. And just one day I looked in the mirror, and my cheeks are all sunk in. I got sores on my face, and just like, what am I doing? But at that time, it wasn't like I was crying out to God. I was just trying to think, it's not what I want. And so went up to Branson. I had like $300 left and went and rented a cheap hotel, and had a girlfriend at the time went with me, and just kind of sweated it out. But when I come back, I just replaced it with alcohol. I become just a lot heavier drinker. And one day I had people came over to the house, and which was all the time. Usually my house was kind of the meet up before everybody went out. And there were some girls that was coming over. My buddy asked me if it was cool if they come over, and I was like, yeah, it's fine if they go over, but I'm going to the club. I like to go to the club. Went to the club every weekend. And so I was getting ready, fixing to head out in the club, and I walked out, and there was these couple girls there that were just hot, fine, and I was like, dang. And, I told my buddies, like, y'all go on, man, I'm just going to hang out. Because they were hanging out at the house. And so there's a particular blonde there that I was just stricken by, and we ended up hanging out, playing cards, and just drinking that night. And I ended up asking her, if I could take her out. So I take this girl out. The first date I take her on, I'm so high I can't even stay on the road. I was running up on the sidewalk. Why in the world she even stayed in the vehicle with me, I don't know. But took her out to eat. No telling what I talked about because I was just high out of my mind. And asked her for, when it was all said and done, asked her for a second date. The second date, I took her to a party. I got slobbering drunk, and sometimes when I got drunk, I'd get real hateful. End up stealing this guy's weed, made her hide it. And I was pouring alcohol out on this poor guy's living room floor, just being a freaking turd, and just... And then I drove her home, and, I was driving with the door open because I was throwing up out the door and trying to drive this girl that I just met, second date. And, but I was just struck by her. So something different about her. And I very quickly, I was like, man, I want to marry this girl. But obviously with that first 2 dates, I wasn't just complete ignorant as far as like realizing this is not going to work. This lifestyle that I'm living, the person that I am, is nowhere near the man that she needs. And if I'm going to be married, it's not going to work out because I'm, just, it was basically a loser. I just not marriage material, not somebody you want raising your kids with. Yeah, even as a kid, man, I think just, I had a huge desire to want a dad, to want a family. I had a cousin that I was really close to. We're only about not even quite a year apart, and he had an incredible family, a great mom, great dad. They'd done like family trips every Friday. It was just a beautiful family. And so, I had what my family, was just me and my mom. And my mom's, she's struggling with addiction. She dates all these losers that just beat the crap out of her all the time. And then I see my cousin to where he's got a mom and dad that loves him. His home is safe. It's not chaotic. They're taking trips. He's got, cool dirt bike. And, it's just like, I just desired that. Just like almost daydreaming about, like, your dad being like, hey, where we're going hunting, or hop in the truck, we're going fishing, or, I didn't have none of that. And so, I wanted that. I didn't know how to accomplish that, or and two, I was just like, well, I just missed out on that. I'm not. But I had grandparents. I had a grandma and grandpa that were godly people, and they were married, and they were Pentecostal. My grandma never shied away from telling me that stuff I was doing I was going to hell for. But they just always looked like they were in love. I mean, they just loved each other. My grandpa treated my grandma so well. But it was just an extreme opposite of what my life was. But it stood out to me, and they would just tell me, like, you need God, Dylan. You got to give your life to God. You're gonna die and go to hell if you. I mean, it's only heaven and hell. They're very blunt. But anyway, when I met who is now my wife now, Jennifer, it just clicked in me what my grandma and grandpa had told me as a child, and just seeing that they weren't like everybody else. They loved each other. They stayed together. They trusted God, honored God, and so when I met Jennifer, I'd only been clean off of meth maybe 2 weeks. Quickly, I met her, and I was like, man, I'm gonna marry this girl. And one day, probably about maybe a month or two, maybe 3 after us dating, I was like, hey, I want to change my life. Like, if we're going to get married, I've got to change. I can't be this man. I can't be doing what I'm doing. And otherwise it's just not going to work. And I told her I wanted to go to the church that my grandparents went to. And so, that was, I guess my grandparents were the ones that instilled in me, like, that a change was even possible, I guess. So before I even was 18, I had 3 felonies. And so when you have felonies, it's like a cloud over you. There's certain things that you can't do. There's certain things, it taints the way people view you or the opportunities that you can have. So I had that. I had no clue what a father looked like. I didn't know how to be a good father. And so, me and Jennifer, we've been married, like I said, 23 years. I got 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls. And we were from meeting each other in 7 months, we were married. So, I mean, it was really quick, but I was like, I've got, I was like, I think in just a desperate plea, I was just trying to change everything in my life, just to try to get it together in hopes that it would work. But when we got married, it didn't change. It almost made it worse, because I was, just come off meth, trying to quit alcohol, which was extremely tough. I'd never been faithful to anybody in my life. And so now I'm trying to get married and be a man that's faithful, trying to be consistent and trying to run a business and provide. And then, within 10 months of us being married, my wife's pregnant. I'm miserable at this point. The first 2 years or maybe even 3 that we were married, like, I hated it. I thought I made a huge mistake. I thought I'm just going to be miserable the rest of my life. I thought she was trying to control me. She didn't want me running around with my buddies. She didn't want me go and play, and so I was just like, man, this sucks. I've made a huge mistake. I don't know how to be married, and I'm not good at it. I'm going to fail at it. And then she gets pregnant. And I remember the exact spot, the corner that I was on in my truck, thinking about, she had let me know she was pregnant, thinking about, I'm going to be a father. I had no idea how to be a father. And I thought, I'm going to screw this up. And I had this thought, like, they would be better off if I wasn't around. Because if I'm around, I'm going to screw it up. I'm going to make it worse. And so I thought, I'm going to leave her. She's got good family support. I'll pay child support, whatever. But I truly thought, if I go off the example that I had with the father, non-existent, even like playing sports, I remember like looking up, playing football, thinking, man, if I just had somebody, I never had anybody in the stands. I never had anybody cheer me on, have nobody encouraging me to make good grades or, I mean, it's just no support system. And I did have my grandparents though. My grandparents truly loved me. They were the best example in my life, and I thank God for them. My grandpa taught me, he did teach me how to work hard, but he just wasn't my dad. My grandma wasn't my mom. But anyway, so I just started panicking and thinking, I can't do this. And but anyway, so I'm having this thought. I'm trying to work this out, how this is going to look. If I just walk away, if I just leave unannounced, tell her I'm done. I didn't really know how that was going to work. But and two, this whole time I was trying to live for God, but it looked really messy. I was still drinking. I was trying to quit that. I was trying to be faithful, trying to stick around, trying to work. And but I did have made up my mind I was going to leave Jennifer. And God just spoke to me in my truck in this on this corner. I was coming around this corner, and He just made me a promise. He told me that if I would stick around, and that if I would serve Him, that He would make me the father to my children that I always wanted as a kid. And I had no clue what that looked like. I had no clue even what that first step was. But in that moment, I just trusted God. I mean, I truly, that was probably the first time I was like, I'm just going to, just the way that, it wasn't audible or anything, just God speaking to my spirit, but it was in such a way that instantly I trusted it. I just took that thought of running away completely out. And it's like, okay, God, you're going to have to show me, because I have no clue. And that set me on a path to where I wanted to be the best husband and the best father and the best man that I possibly could be. Probably one thing worth mentioning, I always thought I was a mistake. Like I felt, my mom would drop me off at people's house, people I didn't even know as a kid. Like the first time I ever met them was when she was dropping me off at their house. And sometimes she'd leave me there 2 or 3 days. And so I felt like, and I remember my mom going to a party or to a club and me begging her, please, can we just go home? I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to these parties. I didn't want to go to the club. And my mom being so annoyed and so upset, and I felt like a mistake, especially seeing other examples of these Christian homes, and just where it was obvious they were excited about their children. They were excited to spend time with them, and it's been like, it really developed an anger. And people be like, well, you should live for God. You should give God. I'm like, if God wanted me to serve Him, He should have. Did He not know what kind of childhood I had? I mean, where was my parents? Where was this childhood and taking me to church and feeling safe and feeling wanted? How can I serve a God that just leave forget about a child, and it became a crutch for me. A lot of anger and bitterness, stirred up into me to where I was like, man, if this is what it looks like, if this is what God looks like, I'm not interested in that. But somebody told me one time and said, well, do you think that you were a mistake? Like God didn't know you. And when I was real young, God had showed Himself to me when I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. I was my grandparents had chickens, and I was getting the eggs, and I was just got the eggs, and I was coming back to the house, and I seen a man. We had a well, and it was a well house, and there was a man sitting on a 5-gallon bucket right next to the well, and he had his back to me, and so I'm carrying the eggs, and I, like I said, I was probably maybe 6 or 7 years old, and when I was walking by, I was like thinking, what is this guy doing here? Who is this? But in my spirit, like I knew who it was, even as a child. And this is crazy. And to some people, this might sound crazy, and so be it. It was crazy. But he didn't say a word to me, but I knew it was Jesus. Even as a child, sitting by this well on a 5-gallon bucket, and it's almost like he's just watching over me. Like, didn't say anything to me, but he was there. And in that moment when somebody asked me if I was a mistake, I remembered that. I remember seeing Jesus on a bucket. Like, he wasn't talking to me or anything like that, but he was just there. He was with me the whole time. And it made me realize that I wasn't a mistake. God knew exactly the childhood I'd have, the pain, the without, the hurt, the struggle. He knew exactly. It wasn't a mistake. He wanted Rhonda to be my mom and Galen to be my dad. And so when I realized like I wasn't a mistake, it took that crutch away. And the Bible says that what Satan meant for evil, God will turn for good. And through this podcast, I know, it's whether even if you grew up in a Christian home, even if you had a great childhood, or maybe you had a terrible childhood, maybe you were molested, awful things that have become such a cloud over you. What I have learned and what God has shown me is that all those struggles and those pains and what I so bad wanted as a child has made me a better father, has made me comfortable around people that are really struggling, people that are in, incarcerated or, battling with addiction, or, they don't feel like any worth. Like I relate to them. And I know, like if I was to write a resume for anybody, to be in even walk in the church, to have a business, to have somebody, do work with Teen Challenge. If I had to write a resume for those doors to be open, my resume would not open those doors. It would actually probably shut them. They'd be like, there's no way, but God has opened up doors that never should be open for me. He shut doors that I could never shut. And he's given me opportunities and things in my life. The fact that I have 6 children and a beautiful wife, and we've been married 23 years, just in itself is a miracle. Because I had no idea how to accomplish that. And through this podcast, I hope that men can understand that no matter their circumstance, their problems, their situation, what they were dealt with, that it no longer becomes a crutch to becoming the man that God, from the very beginning, before they were ever born, had planned for them. God can restore and he can open up doors and opportunities that you could never imagine. I used to say, I used to think Christians were so lame. When I was in high school, I had a friend of mine, and I've told him this before, so if he sees this, he'll know that I'm talking about. His name was Matt, and in school, man, we were friends in school. When we were at school, we were friends, but I would always try to get him to come hang out with me and stuff, and he was like, "Man, I can't do that." It was because the things that I were doing, it just morally, he just couldn't. He had good parents, and he just wasn't going to, he wasn't going to do that. And he told me like, "Man, I just can't be a part of that," And I was like, and I remember telling him, "Man, like, you have no idea what you're missing out in. You have no idea what a good time even looks like." And I used to think Christians, man, they just had no life and just boring. And I was like, I just could imagine them just sitting around with the lights off and meditating all night on a Friday night. I just thought, oh man, if I give my life to Christ, like life will be over and I'm basically going to be this, empty shell of just singing hymnals. It was just so funny, man. I really, that was one big hindrance of wanting to serve the Lord, because I just thought Christians are just so lame, But what I have realized is that I had no clue what true life looked like. Like the life that God has given me, and I still have major struggles. I have disappointments. I fail. Sometimes I feel like the biggest loser on earth. But what's awesome is then through all my, you know what, when I try my very best, I still fail. I mean, just recently, on a project I was doing, I tried my very best, and trying my very best, I still failed. To other people, I looked like a disappointment, and I was. I mean, I couldn't achieve what was expected. But yet God is, in His mercy, accepts my failures. I lean to Him and be like, God, I can't get this right. Sometimes I just can't get it right. And God cradles me up, and He doesn't push me down. He doesn't say, you know what, I'm not opening up another door. I'm not opening up another opportunity. I'm taking away all these blessings. Sometimes He disciplines me, which is rightfully so. He corrects me, and sometimes I got to apologize and throw away pride and admit when I've screwed up, admit that I don't have it together. But what back then, what I didn't realize is that I had no clue in what I was missing. Like, God showed me how to truly enjoy life, truly enjoy what's around me. I love being a father. I mean, I think it's my hobby is my family. I mean, I love spending time with my wife. I love spending time with my kids. I mean, I got, my youngest son's with me right now, just listening to Dad blab on. But I just absolutely love it. And I would just, I would hope that other men out there, maybe even young men, would realize that when you're not serving the Lord, you have no idea of the life you're truly missing out on. So yeah, that's what I hope to accomplish with this podcast, is just encouragement to get men to be the man that God has commissioned them to be, so that they can truly live the life that they were created. Not a mistake. They were intentionally created for a plan that God has. And unless they give God a chance, they will never know what it truly means to live the life that they were created, that they were truly created to live. Yeah, so on our next few episodes, we're going to be talking about my actual neighbor. We'll be talking to his daughter. He's since passed away, but he had a unique talent of putting value into people every time he talked to them. We're going to be talking to another man whose father did not have God in his life, and when God got a hold of him, just the immediate transformation of who he became as a father and a husband. And we'll be talking to a young lady that struggled with addiction, being in the lifestyle of the streets, and just how God got a hold of her life, and just the impact of not having a father in her life, and the down spiral of how that looks. So yeah, we've got some great podcasts coming up. We hope you tune in. We think it's going to encourage you and just maybe give you some wisdom, godly wisdom through other people's experiences.